if there's a team 5,099 miles away, we would rather root for that team than a team from Los Angeles.
Right, fair enough. I think he was referring to Accrington Stanley there, wasn't he? I think he looked up the mileage.
Really, from anywhere in California.
And also for Edward, we did the math on all of the players' average, and the answer is 12 parsecs.
You freaking nerd. I love you, Phil.
All right, Phil, you got some more questions here, or what?
Hit us up some questions.
We've got some more questions here. And so first, and this is where we want to actually give a huge shout out to someone who sent in a whole lot of questions, to the point that we actually are going to make an entire separate episode for the rest of his questions. And this is a shout out to Gary over in Lancashire. But he did send over a few questions here that we're going to answer on tonight's show. And the first one I really need to give him a hard time about is he asked, what's your favorite Phoenix band? And proving that all English people think that California, New York, Las Vegas, and Florida are the only 4 states of the United States. Against all authority is not a Phoenix band. They're a Florida band. However, I will tell you a couple things. First of all, the Glides, I'm not going to talk too much about. They play on every single one of our episodes. If you want to know about the Glides, listen to episode 99, because there's a couple of Phoenix bands worth mentioning. First, the most important band in the history of grunge rock and roll actually came from Phoenix, and that is because Kurt Cobain's favorite band that he modeled Nirvana's style after, and is on record of saying this, and played their songs on his famous Live in New York special, is the Meat Puppets.
Yep. Everything is right about that, and it blew my mind. I had no idea the Meat Puppets were from Phoenix until I moved here. Amazing. I don't particularly like the Meat Puppets too much, but still, that's a hell of a claim to fame.
Secondly, the greatest local album of all time is an album called The Great Beyond by Ricky Fitz. Play it start to finish. One of the problems with pretty much any music from 2005 on, when everything went digital, is people don't make complete albums anymore. Unfortunately, the Ricky Fitz made only one album. My understanding is the entire thing was dropped in one take, which just makes it even more incredible. In Phoenix, we're working as hard as we can to make Accrington Stanley famous in Phoenix. Accrington, make the Glides and the Ricky Fitz famous bands in Accrington.
Right on.
All right, and then I mean, there's a few other mainstream bands. When I was in like high school age, the most famous band for Phoenix was probably the Gin Blossoms, and they're like,
there you go.
I mean, they have some all right songs, but I mean, they're just like, one of those bands that, they're all right. I won't turn them off.
Mr. Jones is a classic. Come on.
Mr. Jones is Counting Crows.
Oh, fuck, it is too, isn't it?
The best song by Gin Blossoms was Hey Jealousy.
There we go. Hey Jealousy. It kind of sounds the same. In fact, it could well be the same song. Think about that.
Think on that one.
I've got a couple of bands to throw your way. Jimmy Eat World, I think, do very well. They're out of Mesa, Arizona, which is kind of that whole connected valley metropolis that we live in. Jimmy Eat World are very good. There's a local chick punk rock band I want to mention called Fairy Bones. They kick ass. And I'm just going to have to delve into my KWSS. Hello, Danny. Hope you're listening. KWSS, our local community radio station, and I'm going to say Banana Gun probably rocked pretty hard too.
I love Banana Gun.
I'm saying it wrong, aren't I? I'm saying it wrong. Banana Gun.
So I'm going to throw out a couple here. I mean, this was a great question. Phoenix, Phil, like you pointed out, Phoenix has a lot of deep musical history. And so the first one I got is if you're into thrash metal, you probably heard of this band, but Flotsam and Jetsam.
Dude.
From the 1980s. Yes. You might have known a little guy named Jason Newsted, who was in the band for their debut album before he went to join just a little band from San Francisco called Metallica. I don't think they've done much recently. But Flotsam and Jetsam, if you're really into thrash metal. I then also really, really enjoyed the band The Format. The Format wasn't around too long, about 6 years, and then they kind of separated, went their ways, did some.
They were having a reunion tour, yes. And it got canceled. And then the lead singer was also in Fun. I don't listen to these people, but I've heard about all of this.
Yeah. So The Format is a great band. I mean, when you're listening to their songs, they're talking about the 51 freeway. I mean, it's just very, very nostalgic, as you, for me, as I listened to them in college, and me and my wife liked them. We saw them live. And so it's just a great band. If you like some good indie rock, really well written. And then my final band is a heavy metal band formed in, I believe, about maybe 5 years ago. And they're the band called Oakley Dokley.
Oh my God.
So Oakley Dokley plays nettle music, which is a mixture of metal and Ned Flanders from The Simpsons. And so they all dress up like Ned Flanders, and so you got Head Ned, Shred Ned, Zed Ned, and Dread Ned. And they're really a fun band to see. Good music. I can't say enough stuff about them. So go check out Oakley Dokley.
Fun fact about those guys, they thought they were going to get a cease and desist, I'm assuming, from Fox. Instead, they got a letter saying, hey, can we use a video clip of your acts, and we're going to shove it in the back end of The Simpsons. And it happened.
Yeah, they were during the end credits, of a Simpsons episode. Yeah.
Wow.
So, we should also mention Mills End, who are a longtime Valley band and are big sports and soccer fans.
Guys, do you think we can claim Tool? I know it's not Phoenix. I know they're from California, but Maynard James Kennedy.
I don't really care to. They're a very pretentious band.
Oh, shut up. They had one of the best gigs I have ever been to.
I didn't say they were good. They have pretentious fans. They're a good band. You can be a good band and have pretentious fans. They have very pretentious fans. They're like Radiohead. They think they're fans think they're better than everybody else.
That is so true. Tool fans think Tool is the greatest thing to ever happen to music, and it's annoying.
Yes, it's Phoenix,
give me some.
They're a really good band. Yeah, it's like Tool is a really, really good band, along with 100 other really, really good bands. Tool fans are like, oh my God, we're the best Tool since the hammer and the screwdriver and the drill.
We need to, guys, I'm thinking we need to find out if the members of Oakley Dokley like soccer, and we need to have them on the show.
Damn, hell yes, we need to do that.
All right,
Maybe in that episode, we do a starting 11 made out of just Simpsons characters. Take a little note out of the Total Soccer Show playbook.
That's freaking brilliant. I love this idea, Matt. Let's do it. I mean, they seem like regular guys. Do you know what I mean? Like they've got that little nice little green knit sweat thing happening. They seem approachable.
well, Gary also asked while we're on the musical topic, and this was a really hard one. And so now one of these bands is from Boston and the other one is from Los Angeles. So I mean, they're both fantastic bands, but definitely not Phoenix at all. Aerosmith or Red Hot Chili Peppers. So basically, this would be like asking somebody from Accrington to pick between a band in Liverpool and a band in London.
Yeah, this isn't hard at all. It's the Red Hot Chili Peppers, hands down.
No, dude, are you kidding me?
It's the Red Hot Chili Peppers, hands down.
No. I'll tell you why. Because every song they sing about is about California, and we hate. Do you remember this? Do you remember this thing we said about 10 minutes ago? They've been dialing in their songs for the last 20 years. They haven't been good since Blood Sugar Sex Magic. I'm going to say
that's not true. That's no. I'm going
to go back further. You're right, Phil.
No. You're wrong. You're wrong. It's not. It goes back years. It depends when John Frusciante is sober enough to make an album. Blood Sugar Sex Magic, Californication, by the way, are their three best albums, and all of them were John Frusciante. If you look at all the shit albums like One Hot Minute, they had what Navarro came in and it sucked. Klinghoffer was starting to kind of get some vibe on the last album, The Getaway, but I've heard that their next album that's coming out, Frusciante, is going to be back, so it's going to be fire again.
Yeah, he came back, dude. I'm sorry, man. It's the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
I call
freaky, styly, uplift mofo party plan.
I call this one a draw, actually, because so here's the thing: is so Aerosmith, to me, they are the greatest American hard rock band in the same way that Led Zeppelin is the greatest English hard rock band. However, the Chili Peppers were much more innovative style because they were the first ones to ever blend. They were the first ones to ever blend rap and rock. Nobody had ever done that before.
Wait, did you say Aerosmith? You said Aerosmith, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I thought you said Red Hot Chili Peppers.
No.
Put John Blast.
The Chili Peppers existed before Walk This Way.
Exactly.
And the Chili Peppers' original albums were much closer to rap. Because if you ever read the Scar Tissue biography by Anthony Kiedis, he says that he originally started rapping because he didn't have a good singing voice, and none of his albums were ever sang until he made Under the Bridge. He made that one song when he was flying back home from Michigan after getting home from rehab. It became a big hit, and then he had to go take singing lessons after that. He never sang before that. They had been around since like 83 and making a new album every time they needed more money from heroin, basically.
So their first album was called the Red Hot Chili Peppers, came out in 84. And it's funk and rap and rock. I mean, it's all three of those genres mixed together. And in fact, this says that this album has been labeled the little spark that ignited the rap rock revolution. It was the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Here's a little fun fact for you guys, a little trivia. I'm full of trivia tonight for some reason. What was Aerosmith's first number one single?
I don't want to miss.
God. Yeah, it's it from that horrible thing from with Matt Damon.
It was terrible. Yeah, it was like it was one of their worst songs. It was never written by them.
Don't wanna go.
Their first number one single wasn't even written by them.
Red Hot Chili Peppers, hands down, is the best band. Led Zeppelin never had a number one song, period. Their highest charting song was Whole Lotta Love, number 2. Chart means nothing.
Well, we're not talking about Led Zeppelin, are we? We're talking about Aerosmith, the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And it's Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Can I choose another band?
No, this is Gary's question.
Oh, screw you, Gary. Well, I'm still going to be the contrarian here. I'm going to say Aerosmith just because I really have a disliking for Red Hot Chili Peppers.
I called it a draw. They're both fantastic, but
I would really be interested to know why Gary chose these two bands.
Right, I know.
I mean, like if I was thinking of like, hey, I'm going to ask, these guys, between these two bands, I might go like Metallica or Megadeth, right? Something that's kind of similar. Yeah, but like to go Aerosmith and Red Hot Chili Peppers, like those are okay. Like I'm for it. I'm with it. Like let's talk about it. But I kind of want to know how he got there.
He certainly elicited a response out of us, shall we say?
well, maybe here's what my take is on it is that I think that probably the perception, at least in England, is maybe those are the two most popular American bands from their selective era in England. Like that, like in the 70s and 80s, Aerosmith was the most popular American band in England. The 90s and 2000s, Chili Peppers, the most popular American band in England. Would that be a possible observation, Aaron? You live there, you might have caught on.
I think you're 100% right there, Phil, actually. You're 100% right.
Aaron, how big was Gwar in England?
How big was what?
Gwar.
Gwar?
Have you never heard of Gwar? Phil, have you heard of Gwar?
Spell that.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of it.
GWAR. Google
I've never
it.
heard of that.
Google it. Actually, after we're done recording, get on YouTube tonight and watch some Gwar live videos.
Oh, okay. Are they local to here or are they London?
No. I think they're either from New York or LA.
Virginia.
They're from Virginia. Okay, yeah, that was way off. Well, Virginia, that's pretty much New York, right?
All right. Another question.
Phil,
come on.
Phil, let's keep going here, man. What's another?
Yeah, well, let's. Gary had a whole bunch of questions, but like I said, I'm going to actually do an entire show of Gary questions with Tony Robinson because most of his questions were kind of specific to Tony's rapid fire. So it makes more sense for me to get on with Tony and answer those. So we're going to move on to some more of our U.S. listeners for Matt and Aaron because those are kind of directed at them. And one of my favorite ones actually comes from Edward.
Phil, real quick. Are we not going to do those two about one about the show, one about a movie? I think we should rapid fire those.
Rapid fire? Okay. I'm not sure if I don't think the three of us are capable of rapid firing anything, so we're just going to skip those.
I think we have to.
Yeah, they're good.
Okay, Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars, hands down.
Star Trek.
Family Guy or American Dad?
Family Guy.
The Simpsons.
Oh, damn it. I wanted that too. I was only allowed
Family
one.
Guy and American Dad both are horrible shows.
They're pretty bad. Yeah.
I'm going to go Star Wars, and then I'll go with the Family Guy just because they were both by the same guy, and the Family Guy was first. So,
fair enough.
Okay, so let's move on because this is maybe my favorite question that we got for the entire episode. And this is from Edward Cunningham.
Oh, God.
What's the Australian guy steal?
What do I steal? Is he calling me a convict? Is he saying, what the hell, man? That's like generations ago, yo. That's racist. Screw you, Edward.
I thought the question was, what's the Australian guy's deal?
Oh, sorry. My bad. I thought he said, what do I steal? I'm like, yeah, back off. Stay in your lane, white boy. I'll come over there and kick your lily ass or whatever they say over here. I don't know. What's my deal? I don't know if I have a deal, I'll be honest.
All right. I guess that's what it is. He doesn't know if he has a deal. There's your answer, Edward.
I'm a smart-ass motherfucker with a quick mouth and I like to drink. So that's about it. Wrapped up in a nutshell. Off we go. Next question.
Okay, one more from Edward. And I answered this earlier, but I actually have a much more detailed answer. He said, first, there is a two-part question. So I answered the first part of his question, which is, how far is Accrington from Phoenix? The answer to that is 5,099 miles. And here's something that is probably, I've discovered is a little known fact. So I always assumed that England used kilometers instead of miles. Right. And then when I started the show, I found out that I was wrong about that. But then here's what blew my mind is when we were doing the Bat Signings episode, when Ross and I were interviewing, I believe it was a gentleman from the Manchester United episode, or it was, or maybe West Ham. I don't remember. It was someone that we were interviewing that lived in England, and he said to me, and for the Americans out there, it was 60 kilometers per hour. And it blew my mind to realize that English people think Americans use kilometers, but we actually use miles. And Americans think English people use kilometers, but they actually use miles. So we're both wrong.
Yeah. England's a bit weird. You drive on the M1 or the M25, which is the orbital around London, and you'll have 70 miles an hour and 110 kilometers on the signs because for whatever reason, they decided to do both. So good for you, England. Way to sit in the fence.
Well, you know that in the Arizona is actually the only U.S. state that used to have kilometer posts. So basically, if you drive down the I-10, the I-10 is the longest freeway in the United States. It stretches all the way from Los Angeles to Miami, which are both cities I know English people have heard of, so you'll understand that. But so anyway, the I-10 goes from Phoenix about 90 miles southeast down to Tucson, which is the next largest city in Phoenix. And
in Arizona.
Yeah, it should be the next largest city in Arizona. So then it used to be that if you drove south from Tucson down onto, I believe, what was Interstate 8, maybe I might be wrong about that.
That's right, yes.
But it went from south from Tucson down to the Mexican border, and that stretch of road, which may be a 50-mile stretch of road, had kilometer posts put in as part of a project in the 1970s where the U.S. was testing converting to kilometers. And then about 40 years later, in like 2010, they decided to change them all back. And I remember reading an article that it was like $30 million to change these signs. And I'm thinking, twice in our state's history, we've wasted our time changing out these signs back and forth from kilometers to miles. And it's just such typical of our state government. But that's our place in history.
I do believe you can still see some kilometer signs along that stretch. All right, lads. Are we done with the quick fire questions?
Well, actually, no, we weren't on quick fire. This is from Edward about Accrington, about how far from Phoenix and why. And believe it or not, I actually had a much more interesting answer than that. Is because I discovered one that in Accrington that there's actually an area that's called Phoenix Place in Accrington. So technically, if you consider that there is Phoenix Place in Accrington, it could be 0 miles or 0 kilometers, depending. Also, I've noticed that in Accrington, there's 2 very interesting businesses that need a sponsor. There's Phoenix Motorsports, which is an auto repair. They have an excellent 4.823 reviews on Google. And Royal Phoenix Chinese Restaurant, 182 reviews on Google, 4.3 stars, $2 signs, affordably priced. Takeout and delivery. That's Royal Phoenix Chinese Restaurant in Accrington. Give us a call.
Yeah, that's fine, man. That's my thing, man. Yeah, all right, cool. I think that's great. I would love to have a Chinese restaurant in Accrington sponsor us.
That's not all.
Do they do to-go or delivery?
Yes, they do. Takeout and delivery. But that's not all. That's not all. See, I once had this idea And when Edward started asking this question, I got the wheels turning about this idea in my head again. And I found out that it might actually be more feasible than I originally thought. So basically, what I wanted to do was annex some land on the outskirts of Phoenix and create a city, preferably near wherever the Phoenix Rising's permanent stadium would be. And it would be a city specifically for soccer fans, so that everybody that likes soccer would live near each other, and we would call it Accrington, Arizona. And so,
Soccer City, USA, man.
Exactly. So basically, what I found out is it's actually not as hard as you would think, as I found out about this town that used to be called Clark, Texas. And so here's how it works. The town of Clark, Texas actually agreed to change its name to Dish. So, I mean, maybe we've actually, get sponsored by Wham and be like Wham, Arizona or something like that. But anyway, so the town of Clark, Texas agreed to change its name to Dish on Tuesday after the town council worked out a corporate deal that will give residents free satellite TV. So we could totally be Wham, Arizona. Everybody gets free plastic boxes. The founder of the town, L.E. Clark, was disappointed by the change. He said, I worked my butt off a little over a year to get it incorporated. He said, he told that, but here's the important part. Let me just cut to the chase here, is that we can actually make this happen. Through the rules, each state has its own rule, but in general, you only need to get 51% of eligible voters to go along with you. It's easiest to start a town from scratch, but opposed to secession, you begin with an unincorporated community, or like Clark, they drew up a boundary of a town that would be a little bigger than a square mile, would include 254 people, of whom 65 were registered to vote. So basically, they only needed to get 33 votes in order to form this 1 mile sized city. So we could totally do something like this.
Dude, I think it's easier than that. It's easier than that. Here's how it goes. So there's a little town in New Mexico, and I've often wondered why it was called Truth or Consequences, because I have to say that is the most Western sounding town you've ever come across. Do you know what I mean? Like, they make Westerns after that town. Truth or Consequences. Come on. You can hear the Spurs rattling. I'm not talking about football Spurs.
Well, I think that you might think that because I think it was in like the old Coyote Roadrunner cartoons, wasn't it?
No, it's still called Truth or Consequences.
Well, no, it's a real thing, but
yeah,
wasn't it in the cartoons too?
Oh, yeah, maybe.
But so there's also in New Mexico, my favorite town name in New Mexico is Tucumcari. Matt, do you have a favorite town name in New Mexico?
No, I don't. No, not really.
You've never thought about your favorite. Do you have a favorite town name in any random state, Matt?
In any random state? Dude, man, that's a good question. You know what? It's not a random state because it's in Arizona, but Nothing, Arizona is pretty interesting.
Man. Oh man, I'm with you on that. And there is literally nothing there.
There's nothing there. Yep. Yeah. Also, isn't there like a Baghdad, Arizona?
There is.
Yes.
And you know what? Hey, I've got a bit of trivia for you here now, Matt. Baghdad, Arizona was the only town in Arizona that was left off the white and gold, or the white and bronze sleeve on the Phoenix Rising shirts. Yeah, they left it off.
Wait, so did they get nothing on there?
Nothing's on there.
Wow.
That was like last fucking conversation.
Dude, you got to send them an email and say you want your money back.
I'm not from Baghdad, but I remember seeing on the Phoenix Rising side, Baghdad, Arizona is not here. And one of the players, I think, from Phoenix Rising was from Baghdad, and they completely dropped the ball on that. They weren't real happy about that in Baghdad, Arizona. I've got another one for you. All right. So there used to be a Santa Claus, Arizona, right?
I remember that.
Yeah. Santa Claus, Arizona was a mining town, and it's like south of Show Low, near Clifton, somewhere over there. I can't remember.
No, Santa Claus was in Mojave County, over by Kingman.
Oh, shit, you're right. There's a Christmas, Arizona, as well. That's the one I'm talking about. Arizona's a weird place, you guys. Please come.
Well, there's also, it's actually not in Arizona. It's actually geographically in Nevada. But so you know how there's a little point that sticks down right in between Arizona and California that's Nevada? Like the very tip of that little triangle. And there's a city there that's right on the border, and it's called Cal Navari because it's on the border of California, Nevada, and Arizona. So it's Cal Navari.
Cal Navari, man. I've been there. I've been through there many a times driving from Bullhead to Las Vegas.
Yeah, that's right.
been through there many a time. Never stopped, but I've been through there.
All right, so
guys,
yeah.
we need live football back because this is
we do. This is getting all right. I've got.
Let's get on to
question, Phil. If I can ask a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've been hogging the questions. My bad.
You have been. Yeah, you have been. I don't want to hear your thoughts on this. Let's make this. Should we do like a ding, ding, ding? Let's give it like 3 minutes or something. 3 minutes apiece, of course. Tim Gerber, who is from 6969 Kiss Ass News, I think that's what he says here in his text. He says, can I get your thoughts on sports returning by month's end? Who wants to take that one first? What do we think about sports returning by the end of May? Or let's extend it further into the first week of June. Go. Someone, go.
So I've seen some reports that MLS is looking at holding all the games in Florida to kind of get things back going again. I don't know necessarily how correct that is. I think it's tough in the U.S. Because obviously you got different states with different restrictions. And so if sports were to resume, in some manner, whether that's soccer, baseball, I don't know if the NBA's ever said how they are going to finish out their season or the NHL. I suspect that it's going to be behind closed doors like we're seeing across the pond. Or, I could see very well what the MLS is doing and saying, hey, let's go to some of these states like Florida or Georgia or maybe even, Arizona, Texas, and let's just kind of host games down there in one of the stadiums. And maybe within a week, you play a whole round of games. I mean, it's just tough to say. I think, I want sports back. I think other people want sports back, but I don't get paid to make those decisions. So
right. So
that's kind of on them.
MLS is obviously flush with cash right now because they've got all these expansion teams in there. So they could probably feasibly continue their season behind closed doors. Well, I mean, at least start the season behind closed doors. Do you know what I mean? The USL,
yeah, absolutely.
The USL won't. They can't. I don't see this happening. And Phil, sorry if I'm stealing your thunder over here, mate, because I asked the question. But as you said, Matt, we seem to have gotten off a little bit lightly over here in the Western Conference, at least apart from, of course, Washington, in terms of, COVID, whatever. But the USL as an organization is nationwide. So East Coast isn't faring so well. I don't think they can start up the Western Conference and let, with fans in there or, even start up the Eastern Conference without fans, because first off, they still need bums on seats. Those teams need bums on seats, as we've spoken about before. ESPN's free TV deal isn't strong enough to contain the league. They're not going to be able to continue the league with that money alone. I don't see it happening, unfortunately. It's not going to happen by the end of the month. It will restart at some point, and I hope the USL survives this little hiccup, but it worries me. It worries me. I have grave concerns for the USL right now.
Yeah, I think there's certainly some clubs within the USL that are going to be at an extreme disadvantage when we come out of this. I think there's an interesting possibility of seeing, maybe the Eastern Conference teams going down to Florida and playing games, and maybe you allow, whatever the state allows, you allow some spectators in there so that there's at least some gate receipts. I actually have always thought, it'd be really interesting when this all starts again. If there is, like say here in Arizona, Governor Ducey and, whoever else is in charge says, you know what, sports, live sports can resume at a decreased capacity, or whatever. I think that the USL then has to honor that. And so when teams travel here to play because of where we're at, Phoenix should be allowed to have their stadium open. And then, if California is still saying, nah, you got to play behind closed doors. Then when Phoenix travels there, unfortunately, OCSC is playing behind closed doors, which is, if we're honest, I mean, Orange County's used to that anyways. So it's no difference for them.
Yep.
So I don't know, man, there's so many different directions you could go. There's so many different ways. There's so many different variables. It's just tough to say right now. I think, the Bundesliga obviously is starting up, in a couple of days here and providing really a blueprint for the rest of the world as far as, here's some precautions to take. Here's what worked. Here's what didn't work. Let's get into this thing.
Hey, Aaron, there were several people that kind of sent in a form of this question. Whose question did you originally read?
That was from Tim Gearber. Good mate of mine, actually. Recent Phoenix Rising convert. So I felt like I needed to give his question some airtime.
Okay, yeah, no, I just I wanted to make sure that I address that. Also, Harry Austin and also our friend Ross Davenport, both friends of ours who are good friends of the show, had also kind of asked some form of that question. So just wanted to make sure we mentioned them as well more than anything else. But
it's a good question, though. It's such a good question because no one knows where the state of sports is going to go forward. And damn it, don't we need it just now? Don't we need some sort of entertainment? But we can't do it without, revenue, apparently. We can't do it without bums on seats. And I don't know. I'm worried, Phil. I'm worried.
Yeah. And I think what it is, ultimately the teams kind of just have to figure it out, and maybe it's a part of the supporters too. If you really love this club, if you want it to see it survive, maybe not being able to open the doors, take some of that money you're saving by not going to those games and not buying the food and not, paying for a ticket and go out and buy some merchandise, buy a hat, buy a shirt. What's that?
Buy some merchandise. You
right
on the money. Go and get yourself a mask which has your team emblazoned across the front. Go and invest it. Go and invest in a season ticket for these guys. Come on, give them some sort of revenue to keep them going. They need this. You love them. They need you. Go support them.
Hey, I need to do a quick cheesed off. Speaking of Phoenix Rising merchandise, cheesed off. I did purchase 2 Phoenix Rising hats, one for Peter Latham, one for Jordan Clark, that I mailed to Accrington back on April 7th, and they still haven't arrived. So USPS and Royal Mail, I'm cheesed off with you. Cheesed off.
There was Matt McLennan. He said, how's it feel like having started this thing, talking to players and having fans all around the world, which I thought was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and one thing that we do need to give a shout out to Matt McLennan is he's going to be helping get the official Accrington Stanley Supporters Club of Australia started once kind of football gets kicked off again.
That's amazing. That is amazing, Matt. Good stuff, mate. I know you asked me to help, but I sent you in Phil's direction because Phil was the linchpin of setting up Accrington Stanley or the official Accrington Stanley Supporters Club of North America?
Just to give a little background on why it's called that is so we had asked about kind of setting up a U.S. supporters club, and then Tony Robinson, who of course you know from our Accrington Stanley current player shows, we're going to be doing a question show with him here coming up soon also, but he said he wanted to get Canada involved, so definitely we did that, and so he kind of runs the Canadian branch from Canada, where we kind of run the U.S. branch from down here, and we've got the website industryandprudenceconquer.com, but now you can actually just go to accringtonstanley.us or accringtonstanley.ca, and both of those will take you directly to the U.S. or excuse me, the Accrington Stanley Supporters Club of North America site.
Dude, you've been busy, haven't you? You've been really busy. But to answer Matt's question, and Matt McLennan's question from Australia, he's in Brisbane, sunny Brisbane, Australia. He says, what's it like having fans and interviews from soccer players all over the world? And to be honest with you, it's a fucking thrill, I have to say. I love the interviews. I love the interviews with the players and the coaches and the owners even. But you know what? With the fans, the people that listen to us, they interact with us. I don't see them as fans. I actually see them as friends. Do you know what I mean? I'm not just being egotistical about this, but I love it because we interact, like we banter. This is what we do on the show. This is what we do on our, digital landscape as well. I love it. It's great, and I'm so glad you guys are engaged with it. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, just the response that we got in terms of questions for this episode that, we're probably going to make 3 more episodes just out of these questions. It's amazing, but it's really a perfect segue into what I wanted to be our final question. This one came from Kevin of the PRFC Fan Show.
Kevin, how are you, mate? Good to see you, fella.
And this was what I wanted to maybe spend a little bit of time on, so it's a good one to wrap up with. I also already had Matt's answer. He did have to take off because we've already been recording for close to 2 hours here. But Kevin's question was, who was your favorite guest, excluding himself? And Aaron, I'll let you start off with this. Who was your favorite guest that we had on the show? Because I'm probably going to go on. So
yeah, I think you already know what my answer to this is. But I have to say, Kevin from PRFC Fan Show was one of the funniest interviews I think I've ever done. Not even an interview, just having a guest on the show. He was brilliant. He brought so much to it. It was excellent. Thank you, Kevin. Loved having you on. Come back on sometime soon.
We're definitely going to get Kevin on soon because he is going to be joining us whenever we really do Uber das Feld, because he is an expert on Bundesliga. So we need to get him on soon and help us make sure we're saying Gelsenkirchen correctly and that kind of thing.
Very good. Very good. But to answer his question, I do believe you. We had a bit of a chat about this on our little group chat, and you were right, Phil. It was the Brett Ormerod interview. And honestly, here's why. So Brett was he was our first Premier League player or ex-Premier League player, wasn't he?
Yeah. That was, and I just want to take a minute here. One thing that probably does not get given enough credit. We give a lot of credit here to Peter Latham, who sets up the current player interviews with us, and we don't give enough credit to Darren Woodhead sometimes because he actually appears on the show with the guests. But Darren Woodhead is the one who set up the Brett Ormerod interview with us. He has been the one who was instrumental getting David Lloyd onto the show. Yes. He arranged the Jimmy Bell interview that we recently had. And he has a number of great legends, plus himself, who is, in my mind, is probably the world's foremost historian on Accrington Stanley.
Phil, you're right. Darren, great mate of mine. In all honesty, I want to go over and see an Accrington Stanley match, but I also want to go see a cricket match. And the reason why is because I'm going to be there with Darren Woodhead, because he's such a top character. And I know we're going to have so much to talk about, and we're going to have so much banter. He's an excellent lad. Love the guy, but he was the one that put Brett Ormerod in front of us. And he started off his career in Accrington Stanley. This guy holds the record of scoring in every single top-tier division in England. It's not been done until this guy came along. He scored. He put Blackpool up to get them into the Premier League, and he scored in the Premier League as well. But here's the thing. Brett Ormerod was very, very early on in our podcasting careers, I guess you could say, Phil, right? He must have been...
Oh, yeah. I want to say it was maybe 4 months in. It was maybe like episode 25-ish. He was like our 5th or 6th guest, I want to say.
Right. Okay. All right. But Brett was just, as I said, he was like very cagey and a little bit reserved to start with. And then we started asking questions about, his career and things like that. And he started opening up. And I asked one question, and I don't think I've ever had a more honest, open, emotional response as what I've ever had on the podcast since. Do you know what I mean? Like, he just opened up about his future career and his troubles with depression and wondering what to do about his life after football, because, when he was playing, I guess there wasn't that many sort of avenues up. He's done very well for himself since, but that was the most honest, open interview I've ever come across. And I have to say, it still makes me choke up a little bit, because I was really upset when he was talking about the stuff that he was talking about on that. That was the best podcast we've ever done.
It really was. And it was a moment where, it's strange. We've had a lot of moments on the show where, it's kind of like when we started this, and, like going back to what we were talking about earlier, we kind of started out where, like I said, I wanted to make a podcast about Accrington Stanley, and you didn't even believe I was serious for 2 months. And then like, I remember I said, and I planned that we're going to have people in England listening to us. And you said, to do what? Laugh at our accents? And now it's like we have some episodes, we have more listeners in England than we have in the US. And that just blows me away. And the fact that, we've, become part of the Accrington Stanley community. The question about the best interview other than Kevin, because if you've ever met Kevin before, you will not meet a better human being in your life. Right. And thank you for the question, Kevin. And when you were kind of the original podcast guy here in Phoenix in terms of doing the PRFC fan show and the interviews with Phoenix Rising players, and you've never been anything but welcoming to us and helpful to us as a show. And we also are more than happy to have you as a friend, and now people can get to your YouTube channel by going to prfcfanshow.com. And if you've never checked out Kevin's fantastic show before, make sure you do. He has just about the whole squad worth of Phoenix Rising interviews on there. Just fantastic stuff.
This guy knows football inside out. He knows Phoenix Rising inside out. Great guy. Wonderful sense of humor. We probably take the piss out of him too much, Phil, but yeah, no, Kevin, thanks for listening, and thanks for just being a mate.
Yeah, and in terms of your question, first off, it's actually a super easy answer for me in some ways, and a super hard answer for me in other ways. I'll tell you this, if somebody were to ask me the worst guest that we ever had on the show, I would not be able to answer that because everybody...
I can. Hello, Matt McLennan. Talk some more next time you're on the show, okay?
No, but in all seriousness, every person that we've ever had on the show has been absolutely fantastic. Anybody that we've ever had on the show, we would have on 100 times over again. And there's not one person we've ever had on the show that I don't regret that, we couldn't spend more time with. And certainly, there's a few. When Arran and I started the show, we were talking about when we first started the show tonight. There were a couple guests that we mentioned that were guests that were kind of bucket list guests. And we've actually managed to get two of those guys onto the show. One of those was Andy Holt, who's the Accrington Stanley owner. The other one, we recently had Daryl Grove at the Total Soccer Show, who, like we said, is kind of a guy that inspired us to want to start a podcast in the first place. So they certainly merit a mention because they were every bit the fantastic guest. If you haven't heard either one of those episodes, please go back and do.
Phil, I've got one more question for you.
Well, wait, I haven't even given my answer yet.
Oh, shit, dude. Okay, go on.
Okay. And we also have to mention Scott Brown. We could not mention Scott. He's been on the show 4 times now. I don't even know if we would ever even have a show if Scott hadn't come on to that second episode. That gave us the fire that we needed to kind of get going. And the fact that I talk to Scott on a regular basis and consider him a friend now. And also, Scott recently had a birthday, so happy birthday, Scott. But
how old is he now? He used to be like 45?
14 jerseys.
Sorry, Scott, mate.
Scott counts his names. It counts his birthdays and how many teams he's played for.
I do remember that.
but honestly, the question is an easy answer because the best interview that we did is the last interview that I was on, and that is somebody that I set up as a season finale episode because I expected it to be something worthy of a season finale episode. And you know how when you build something up to the point of the fact that you make a movie trailer for a podcast, you're like, nothing can ever deliver. And then something just beyond delivers.
Dun, 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 dun.
To have, it's just hard to put John Coleman into perspective for people over here in the States, what the man has accomplished with Accrington Stanley, 4 promotions over 20 years on the budget that he has, keeping a team in League One. And then here's the thing. It's one thing to have a guy like John Coleman on your show.
Coleman, I'm so upset I missed that interview. I would love to have had a chat with you. I'm sure that would have been my most favorite interview.
Well,
Bill, I understand what you're saying. I understand.
I'll tell you this. I will tell you that we made a 3-part trilogy with John Coleman, and I think here's what I'm looking at is I do think that we're going to end up having at least 9 episodes, and I promise that we will do it in less than a 38-year period.
I'm a Star Trek fan. I don't understand what you're talking about.
But anyway, what I wanted to kind of wrap up with is and this is what blows me away, and this is what makes this my favorite interview. It's one thing to have a guy like John Coleman on the show. It's another thing to have John Coleman say, "Yeah, I listened to the show." It's another thing to have John Coleman say, "Hey, Tony, you forgot to ask me the question about EastEnders and Coronation Street." and
what was his answer? I know the answer, but tell to our listeners.
I mean, to be a guy who said to Arran one day, "I want to make a podcast about Accrington Stanley," and then to go make a podcast about Accrington Stanley and have John Coleman come on the show and tell me he listens to every show, would be like saying that I'm going to go make a podcast about the Chicago Bulls and then finally having Michael Jordan come on and having Michael Jordan say, "Yeah, I listened to every episode." That's what I...
Chills. That was chills. I got that, Phil. I got that. That's amazing. That's amazing.
So you heard Matt's answer, and I'm sure you listened to that episode. And this one is certainly, if I had to pick a top 10, this would certainly be in my top 10. But so Matt, so basically, it was 2 weeks ago that Matt and I were lucky enough to speak with Peter Ramage, who, of course, is the first team coach for the Phoenix Rising. Over here, we say head coach instead of manager. So Rick Schatz is basically, just to break it into Accrington terms, if John Coleman would be like Rick Schatz, so then Peter Ramage would be it's similar to Jimmy Bell's position of a first-team coach. But Peter Ramage also is a player. He played in the Premier League with Newcastle. He traveled around. He played with like QPR, Crystal Palace in the Championship. He won a promotion with Crystal Palace in the Championship, but it ended up moving on. And then he actually moved on to Barnsley. When he was with Barnsley, he actually played with Jordan Clark there early in Clicker's career. And then, so Peter Ramage came on the show. And so basically for the first half of the show, I asked him questions about his playing career in England. And then the second half of the show, Matt asked him questions regarding his coaching career with the Phoenix Rising. So that episode, it really had a little bit of everything about it. And so it was about a 50-minute episode, really cut into half and half. And so Darren Woodhead, who, of course, he's Mr. Accrington Stanley, really hadn't ever followed U.S. football at all until, he became a part of this show. And is not a Phoenix Rising fan, even said that was one of his top 5 favorite shows. So if a guy that doesn't even care much about Phoenix Rising is going to say a Phoenix Rising interview is one of his 5 favorite shows that we've ever made, that really says a lot about it right there.
Yes, it does. I find that amazing, actually. I wasn't on the Peter Ramage interview as much as I wanted to be. Obviously, this guy's seen a lot of football in his life, and right now he's holding up the rear guard for Phoenix Rising and doing a great job of it. And that interview, when I heard it, I was just envious. I was green. I wanted to be on that. I had so many questions to ask, and I couldn't do it. But that's okay, because it's bigger than me. But I've just got one more question for you, Phil.
Yeah.
You've started the podcast, or we started the podcast pretty much bang on 2 years ago. right?
Yeah. I mean, it was basically, it was really kind of after the 2018 World Cup was starting to wind down. I said, we need to find a way to make Americans care about football more than once every 4 years. I think that was the initial idea.
That was exactly what you said to me after the playoff games at the Phoenix Rising South End. And there's flares going off, there's flags waving around. I think it might have been your first or second game there. And you're like, oh, hell yeah, I'm all in on this shit. Right, brilliant. But you've met your goals, Phil. You've met your goals for this podcast, haven't you? What do we do next?
Well, I mean, I think goals-wise, I think there's a couple of things that we need to talk about. It. One goal, and this is probably out of everything that we've accomplished, this might be the thing that I'm the most proud of numbers-wise, is within the past few days, we've reached the point where we're at 9,000 plus streams over the past 90 days. That means over a 3-month period, we've averaged 100 streams a day.
That's nuts. That's great. I'm not talking about actual figures. I'm talking about who do you want to interview next?
Well, I mean, we made a bucket list, and there was 3 guys on it. One of them was Andy Holt. One of them was Daryl Grove. And I mean,
the other one was?
Didier Drogba.
Why don't we just shove Thierry Henry in there? I mean, what's he doing? He's not doing much now. He's coaching some shit team over the East Coast who aren't even playing. He's not making ads for Renault Car Company anymore. I'm pretty sure he's got time for us to come on the show. Can we make it?
I mean, that would be
our aim to get Thierry Henry on our show. I even know a bit of French.
All right. Well, Matt left us about a few minutes ago, however long it's been. We've digressed more times than any other episode, but Aaron, it's been too long, and this has been a lot of fun, and I appreciate you hanging out with me all night tonight.
Man. Of course, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. Always enjoy hanging out with you guys. From my mate from State 48.
My brother from down under.
Mr. Wizard over there. Good night.
On Stanley on.